Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. Before the escalation of the Arab-Israeli War of Attrition in 1969, both sides were working hard to increase their military power. Their own development and production capabilities were still very limited, but even Egypt showed some ingenuity and succeeded in improving its Soviet-delivered equipment. In an earlier video, you could see how they installed British-made reconnaissance cameras in spent fuel tanks, and later even in MiG-21 RF versions of the Soviet fighter. One very significant piece of equipment that the Egyptians managed to improve was the Suez Su-7 fighter bomber. Originally designed as a low-level fighter, it proved to be inadequate in this role and was instead relegated to a fighter bomber. By early 1969, the Egyptian Air Force operated 5 squadrons of Su-7s, and the type's shortcomings were quite obvious. Despite being very fast in a straight line, it suffered from a very short range and a limited payload. The Egyptians dealt with the first problem by creating bigger drop tanks. They took the initial 500-liter models and stretched them to accommodate 950 liters of fuel. The modification was introduced in 1968, and local production commenced as well. This was especially important because the Soviets deliberately limited the supply of fuel tanks to Egypt to about 3 sets per aircraft. Similar limitations were in place for the delivery of bombs, to which the Egyptians responded by designing their own copies of Soviet bombs, and even some indigenous designs. But probably the most significant improvement was the introduction of 2 additional underwing pylons, thus increasing the number of hardpoints to 6, and greatly enhancing the Suez mission effectiveness. One of the first missions flown by the improved Su-7 BMK took place on 18th of April 1968. The main target was the Israeli airfield at Belouza in northern Sinai. 4 Su-7s of No. 46 Squadron carried 4 bombs each and approached Belouza, while MiG-17s were keeping Israeli interceptors busy elsewhere. The Egyptians claimed to have destroyed an Israeli C-47 transport aircraft in this attack. A similar modification was introduced to the Egyptian MiG-17s, which could now carry 2 bombs, 8 unguided rockets, and 2 drop tanks on a single mission. Nothing of the sort could be achieved with the Egyptian MiG-21s, however. Many of them lacked internal guns, and a solution was attempted through the acquisition of MiG-21 PFMs, which could carry a twin-barrel 23mm gun pod. Unfortunately, the pod occupied the central line pylon, thus preventing the use of a drop tank, which the notoriously short-legged MiG-21 could hardly do without. As a result, the gun pod was rarely carried. Poor performance of the R-3S missile supplied by the Soviets and their refusal to provide improved versions of it was another challenge for the Arabs, who had to wait until 1973 to receive a better missile. Things were again heating up over the Suez Canal in May 1969. An aerial battle occurred on the 21st, and both sides confirmed that it took place and even partially agree on the final outcome. However, the sources seem to be talking about completely different battles. According to the Egyptian side, the Israelis were around that time starting to send their Mirages well west of the Suez in order to catch the MiGs as they were low on fuel and attempting to land. On 21st of May 1969, 4 Mirages crossed the canal at low altitude and remained undetected, until they attacked a flight of MiGs returning to Inchas after an inconclusive battle with another flight of Mirages. MiG number 4 was quickly hit with a missile and shot down. Egyptian number 3 then attempted to fight the attackers, but was soon shot down by gunfire. Reda el-Iraqi, who was flying as number 2, recalled asking GCI if there were any enemy fighters in the area. After hearing that 2 had been detected, but had disappeared from radar, el-Iraqi looked around. He spotted 4 Mirages going after him. They reportedly launched several missiles, but the MiG pilot escaped, eventually landing at Inchas with his engine flaming out just before touchdown. Another flight of MiG-21s was then launched from Inchas, with Major Sami Morel as the leader. The MiGs were guided to another flight of Mirages. Major Morel and his wingman reportedly approached them at low altitude and launched 2 of their Attrition missiles. One of those is claimed to have hit Mirage number 4, whose pilot ejected. However, according to the Egyptian sources, he landed in the canal and drowned after becoming entangled in the parachute lines. There are no reported Israeli Mirage losses for this particular date. The Israeli version of the 21st of May battle goes something like this. 119 Squadron was based at Tel Nof, but at the time kept an alert detachment at Refidim in central Sinai. The squadron commanding officer, Ran Ronen, was anxious to find some action, and he took 2 ready Mirages and made himself and Reuven Rosen available to the head of Air 3 operations branch. The 2 pilots were then told to take off from Tel Nof and head toward Bardaville Lake at low altitude. Both of these pilots have appeared in our earlier videos, and Ran Ronen will be especially familiar to viewers of History Channel's dogfights. After reaching Bardaville, Ronen and Rosen were told to climb to 20,000 feet at full power on a heading of 240 degrees. They were to help Asher Sneer and Eli Menahem, who had taken off from Refidim, and were already engaged in a fight against Egyptian MiGs. Ronen and Rosen then came upon 2 pairs of MiGs, one following the other in line astern. Ronen turned after the first pair, but Reuven Rosen decided against following his leader, fearing they would both put themselves right in front of the second pair. Rosen did not see his leader again until the end of the engagement. He then went after the second MiG pair and ended up chasing a MiG that wasn't being flown very aggressively. The Egyptian pilot was evidently trying to disengage, and he eventually succeeded, leaving the frustrated Israeli pilot behind. Hohenhausen could no longer see any aircraft, even though he could hear his 3 colleagues over the radio engaged in dogfights. As Hausen was flying northwest at 18,000 feet, he finally spotted a MiG heading west at 4,000 feet. A command to stop the fight and disengage came over the radio, but Hausen wasn't about to waste the opportunity. He dived and close to about 500 meters from the MiG, which was now in a left turn. But then Hausen saw that he was overtaking another Mirage which he hadn't noticed before. This was Asher Sneer, who saw Rosen but thought it was his wingman, Eli Menahem, trying to steal his MiG kill. Sneer then attempted a trick, calling on the radio, "Number 2, a MiG on your tail, brake." But Rosen saw through it and kept chasing the MiG, eventually hitting it with his guns. Sneer's attempt to trick Rosen, however, resulted in his wingman Menahem missing an opportunity. At the time, he was elsewhere chasing another MiG-21, but he broke away after hearing his leader's warning. Three Israeli pilots were given kill credits on that date: Ran Ronen, Hohenhausen, and Asher Sneer. All of the kills were reportedly achieved by the Mirage's 30mm cannons. On the other hand, we have Egyptian sources admitting the loss of 2 MiGs, but claiming that one of them was hit by a missile. We also have an Egyptian victory claim, but with no confirmation on the Israeli side. One more Egyptian aircraft was definitely lost on 21st of May 1969. It was a MiG-17F, which was shot down by a Hawk SAM battery located near Baluza airfield. The MiG flight leader was hit and shot down. The war of attrition was slowly escalating, with more clashes between MiGs and Mirages following soon. Even though Egyptian losses were heavy, one of these battles even ended with the shoot-down of the first Israeli jet Ace. Let us know in the comments if you're interested in learning more about it, and like always, keep watching Showtime 112.